The smell of burning metal and scorched earth filled the air like a silent warning. The planet Mustafar groaned under the heat of its rivers of lava, hissing and bubbling like the wrath of the galaxy itself. The sky bled red, and somewhere above, the chaos, two Jedi stood across from each other, brothers by bond, now divided by pain. Anakin Skywalker stood with his fists clenched, lips tight, and eyes burning not just with anger, but with confusion. The dark whispers of the Sith echoed in his mind, slithering like serpents. They betrayed you. She will die. Only power can save them all. Across from him, Obi-Wan Kenobi's face was pale, heartbroken. He didn't raise his saber. Not yet. "Anakin," he said, voice low, trembling, "this isn't the way. You still have a choice." The words hit harder than a saber strike. For a second, everything paused. The screams, the lava's roar, the ghost of Palpatine's promises, gone. It was just Anakin, a man, not a monster, and he thought of Padme, her soft voice in the Senate, her hands trembling as she told him she was pregnant, the way her eyes had filled with fear when he spoke of ruling the galaxy. "You're breaking my heart," she had whispered, and it haunted him now like a phantom. He blinked. Sweat dripped down his temple, but it wasn't just the heat. "Obi-Wan," he said, voice raw, I don't know anymore." For once, Obi-Wan didn't speak as a Jedi. He didn't posture or plead. He took one step forward, hands still lowered. "Then let's leave. Together. Walk away. We'll face whatever comes. Together." Behind Anakin, the ship was still there. Padme was inside, unconscious but alive. He could turn around. He could walk away from the edge. But every step forward meant leaving behind the fire that had promised him salvation. The fire that came with Sidious, the fire that burned the Republic down to ashes and told him he would rise from it like a god. He looked at his own hands. They were shaking. His breath came hard, shallow. "I thought I had to do it, for her, for them." "You don't have to become this," Obi-Wan whispered. Silence again. The lava hissed. And then, for the first time in days, Anakin dropped his saber. It clanged to the ground, a dull sound that somehow silenced everything else. Obi-Wan didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Anakin stepped back. His eyes, yellowed with the dark side, flickered, and then, slowly, painfully, they faded back to blue. A shiver ran through him. In that single moment, something broke. Or maybe it healed. He turned, without a word, and ran to the ship. Padme lay still, her chest rising and falling faintly. He sank to his knees beside her, gripping her hand. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I was lost." Behind him, Obi-Wan entered cautiously, as if afraid it was a trick. But it wasn't. The galaxy would never know the exact moment Darth Vader ceased to exist, because he never fully came to be. Only Anakin Skywalker remained, broken, scarred, but still a man. And outside, the lava kept flowing, mourning the villain that never rose from its fire. The wind howled above Mustafar as the ship lifted from the scorched landing pad. Anakin stood near the window, watching the rivers of lava fall away beneath them like veins of an ancient, dying world. In his arms, Padme stirred faintly, her breath still fragile, her skin pale. Beside him, Obi-Wan remained quiet, watching Anakin as if afraid this fragile piece could shatter at any moment. Anakin didn't speak. He couldn't. His mind was drowning in everything he'd almost become. Every breath he took felt like it wasn't his to take. He had stood one step from the edge, from damnation. The image of Mace Windu flying through the window. The screams of Jedi younglings, the bitter, poisonous whispers of Sidious, they all clung to him like blood that wouldn't wash off. "I would have killed you," Anakin finally said, voice hoarse, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. "If you had fought me, I wouldn't have stopped." Obi-Wan glanced down. "I know. You still came with me. I had to." That silence between them now wasn't the kind born from distance, but pain. Shared pain. Guilt that stretched across both of their shoulders. Obi-Wan had seen the signs. He had felt Anakin slipping inch by inch, and he'd done nothing until it was almost too late. Padme stirred again, a weak cough escaping her lips. Anakin turned immediately, brushing her hair back, his voice trembling. "You're safe. I promise I'm here." Her eyes fluttered open. Her first sight was Anakin's face, and not the twisted, furious mask she'd seen before. This time, he looked like himself, younger, broken, real. "Anakin," she whispered. Tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he choked. I was gone, but I'm here now." For a moment, the galaxy felt still, but in the shadowed corners of Coruscant, another presence stirred. In his high tower above the city, Darth Sidious stood before the vast windows of his chamber, his hands folded, face calm. But his rage was volcanic. He had felt it, the sudden break in the dark current, a hole in the Force, sharp and hollow. Anakin Skywalker had turned away. The chosen one, the vessel he had forged with careful manipulation, had fled. His puppet had cut his strings. A low growl escaped his throat as he turned to the shadows behind him. "Send word," he said, voice like knives on silk. "Vader is gone. Skywalker has betrayed us." A figure emerged, cloaked, faceless. "What are your orders?" "Kill them all." Back aboard the ship, Obi-Wan watched the stars blur. As they entered hyperspace, they were headed for Polis Massa, a hidden medical outpost. Somewhere safe, somewhere far from the Empire's reach, for now. But he knew this wasn't over, not even close. "Anakin," he said, breaking the silence. "Palpatine won't let this go." Anakin didn't look at him. "Let him come. You're not strong enough yet." "I don't care," Anakin said quietly. "I don't care what it costs me. I'll protect her, I'll protect them." It wasn't rage in his voice now. It was purpose, a cold, clear determination that came not from the dark side, but from something deeper, something older, love. But Obi-Wan knew the cost of standing. Against Sidious. They were fugitives now, traitors to the Empire, and Padme, innocent and fragile, was still carrying life within her, children whose fates were tied to the Force itself. Obi-Wan sat back, closing his eyes. They had bought themselves time, but the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Polis Massa was cold, quiet, and buried in isolation, a medical station carved into asteroids on the edge of nowhere. It pulsed with soft white lights and the low hum of machines, a place of healing, but also of secrets. Here, where no one dared look, Anakin and Padme had a chance to breathe again. She lay in the medbay now, barely conscious, while droids hovered above her with instruments and monitors. Obi-Wan stood in the corridor outside, arms crossed, pacing like a ghost in the sterile light. Inside, Anakin refused to leave her side. He held her hand gently, afraid he might break her. The memories kept flashing, not the ones of their time on Naboo, or her laughter in the garden, or the nights under Coruscant's glittering skyline, but the ones he'd almost created. The image of her lifeless in his arms, the terrible self-inflicted prophecy that had almost come true. "Come back to me," he whispered. "Please." She stirred, and her eyes opened again, more alert this time. "Where are we?" She murmured. "Safe," he said, brushing her cheek. "Far from Coruscant, the babies. They're all right. The droids say everything is stable." Her eyes searched his, as if trying to be sure it was really him. You didn't hurt anyone else?" Anakin closed his eyes. "I almost did. Obi-Wan stopped me, but I turned back, Padme. I turned back before it was too late." Her lip trembled as tears filled her eyes. "I was so scared. I thought I lost you." "You almost did," he whispered. In the hallway, Obi-Wan felt something shift, a disturbance in the Force, faint but undeniable. His hand instinctively dropped to his lightsaber. Something was coming. That night, Anakin sat in the quiet room beside Padme, her breathing steady now, the pulse of machines, steady like a metronome. His thoughts were no longer racing, they were sharpening, clearing. He knew what Sidious would do. He would send assassins. He would smear Anakin's name across the Empire's lips, branding him as a traitor. He would erase Padme, the children, all of them, to preserve his own hold. But more than that, the Jedi were gone, and Anakin had helped destroy them. "I have blood on my hands," he said, barely above a whisper. Obi-Wan stood behind him. "Yes," Obi-Wan said softly, "but you still have your soul." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Obi-Wan added, "There are others, survivors, Yoda, maybe a few others, but scattered, hunted." Anakin turned slowly. "Then we find them. We bring them back. We rebuild." Obi-Wan didn't respond right away. His eyes were tired. "You think they'll follow you?" "They won't have to," Anakin said. "They'll follow hope." Hope. The word felt dangerous, rebellious. Obi-Wan nodded once, but the peace didn't last. Just hours later, the first assassin arrived. A cloaked figure breached the asteroid field, bypassing scanners with Sith stealth. He landed in silence, steps echoing through the outer corridors. Droids didn't even detect him, but Anakin did. He stood from Padme's side, lightsaber in hand, before he even fully understood why. His heart thudded, his body tense. Obi-Wan met him in the corridor. "Feel that?" Anakin nodded. "He's here." And then, like a shadow bursting into flame, the assassin stepped from the end of the corridor, dual red sabers igniting with a scream of plasma. "Skywalker," the assassin hissed. "The Emperor sends his regards." Anakin stepped forward, fury igniting in his chest, not for power, but for protection. "Tell him I'm not his puppet." The assassin lunged, blade slicing through the air. Anakin blocked the strike, his saber locking with the red blade, the Force crackling around them. This was no longer a duel for dominance. It was war, for survival, for redemption. The clash of sabers lit the sterile hallway with blinding flashes of red and blue. Sparks rained down like dying stars. The assassin moved with speed born of hatred, a blur of rage, trained by Sidious in the shadows for this very purpose, to eliminate the traitor. But Anakin was no longer clouded by the dark side. His focus was sharp, his movements fluid, unchained from fear or ambition. Each parry was precise. Every strike had purpose. He wasn't fighting for the Republic, not even for the Jedi. He was fighting for Padme, for their unborn children, for the man he almost let die inside himself. Obi-Wan flanked from behind, trying to corner the assassin, but the Sith was skilled. With a twist, the cloaked figure kicked off the wall, spinning mid-air to strike at Obi-Wan's neck. Anakin's blade intercepted just in time, the hiss of burning plasma flooding the corridor with heat. "He's stalling!" Obi-Wan muttered, breathless. Anakin frowned. "No, he's waiting." As if on cue, a second presence landed. This one heavier, colder. Another dark assassin stepped from the shadows near the docking bay. His mask was iron-like, with slits that barely revealed glowing eyes beneath. A two-pronged lightsaber ignited in his hands, humming like a funeral bell. "Back up," Anakin whispered, teeth clenched. Obi-Wan's expression hardened. Then, "We don't play defense anymore." The two Jedi moved in perfect coordination. Anakin's strikes were fast, unrelenting, while Obi-Wan's counters kept the enemies from gaining ground. But the assassins were not ordinary. They had been bred in darkness, their minds twisted by pain, loyal only to Sidious and the blood he demanded. As the battle pushed toward the outer corridor, a blaster bolt suddenly zipped through the air. It struck the wall near Anakin, barely, missing. More followed. Droids, security ones, hacked and repurposed, stormed the base from the other side. Palpatine's corrupted the systems, Obi-Wan growled. He knew where we were. He always knew. Anakin's heart sank. Padme. I have to get to her, he shouted. Obi-Wan nodded. Go, I'll hold them off. Anakin turned and ran, saber still lit, slicing through a group of corrupted droids that burst through a side door. He sprinted toward the medbay, his legs fueled by sheer terror. He reached her just as the room shook with a distant explosion. The glass wall cracked, alarms wailed. Padme lay exposed, the medical droids offline, her pulse faltering again. Smoke was seeping into the room from behind him. Anakin knelt, pulling her into his arms, holding her as the ceiling above began to groan under the weight of structural damage. She coughed weakly. What's happening? I've got you, he whispered. I won't let anything happen to you. He lifted her gently, wrapping her in his cloak, using the Force to push debris out of his path as he ran. The base was falling apart around them, and behind him the air trembled. The first assassin, burned and battered, reappeared at the corridors, Edmund, blood dripping from his mouth, sabers still lit, limping but alive. He looked at Anakin not with hatred, but pity. You could have ruled the galaxy, the assassin hissed. Now you'll be buried with it. Anakin didn't speak. He set Padme down and stepped forward. He didn't raise his saber. He simply closed his eyes and reached out with the Force. A wave erupted from him, a massive surge of energy that ripped down the corridor like a storm. Lights shattered, walls cracked. The assassin was hurled back like a rag doll, slammed into metal, falling unconscious in a broken heap. Anakin gasped, stumbling, nearly collapsing. Padme opened her eyes weakly, barely conscious, but enough to whisper, "You're not that man anymore." He turned to her, kneeling, holding her hand. I don't want to be. Behind them, Obi-Wan staggered into view, bleeding, limping, but alive. We have to leave, now. Anakin nodded. But just as he scooped Padme back into his arms, the ship's communication panel lit up with a cold digital crackle. A hologram flickered. Into view, and there he was, Darth Sidious. The Emperor's twisted face filled the screen like a ghost. You disappoint me, Skywalker, he said, voice smooth and deadly, but not nearly as much as you've doomed her. The transmission cut, and suddenly Anakin felt it, a dark, poisonous energy descending upon them. He looked at Obi-Wan. He's coming. The stars outside Polis Massa were no longer peaceful. They churned with turbulence, as if the Force itself trembled. A distant tremor pulsed through the asteroid field, not from impact, but from presence. He was here. Obi-Wan stood at the edge of the hangar bay, gazing into the blackness, feeling the cold wash over him like a flood. He'd felt it before. Odongeonosis in the Jedi Temple after Order 66, on Mustafar, that consuming void that followed wherever he walked. Darth Sidious. Behind him, the ship's systems hummed to life. Anakin stood at the controls, one hand on the throttle, the other gripping the armrest so hard the metal groaned beneath his fingers. Padme lay in a medbay cot behind him, fragile, unconscious again, her breathing shallow. She can't be. Moved much more, the droid had warned earlier. The stress to her system could... I don't care, Anakin had snapped. If he gets here, none of us will live anyway. Obi-Wan turned from the entrance. We need to leave now. Anakin hesitated. He's going to sense it if we run. He already knows we're afraid, Obi-Wan said. But fear won't save us. Speed might. But the moment Anakin reached to engage the hyperdrive, the lights flickered. A heavy silence fell. And then a shape appeared just outside the hangar bay. Not a ship, not a man, a monster. Sidious entered without resistance, without fear, his cloak dragging behind him like a shadow that slithered of its own will. His eyes glowed yellow, sick with darkness, and his lips twisted into a smile that held no warmth, only doom. "Skywalker," he whispered, "you've returned to the light. How quaint." Anakin stepped forward. "You won't touch her." Sidious raised an eyebrow. "You think love makes you powerful now? How disappointing." He didn't ignite a saber. He didn't need to. His power pulsed around him like a storm. Obi-Wan moved in behind Anakin, blade lit, stance tight. "You're done, Palpatine. Lies. Your empire, they die here." Sidious laughed, a low, chilling sound, so noble, so predictable, Jedi to the end. And with a sudden motion, the Sith Lord raised both hands. The Force exploded through the chamber. An invisible wave hurled Anakin and Obi-Wan across the hangar, smashing them into walls. Alarms blared. Metal buckled. The lights died completely, plunging the room into flickering emergency red. Anakin gritted his teeth, staggering to his feet, his saber hissing to life. "You used me," he growled. "You made me believe love was weakness, but it's stronger than you'll ever be." Sidious sneered. "Then let it save you." He raised a hand again, lightning leaping from his fingers, raw, endless, blinding. Anakin caught it on his blade, staggering back, screaming through the pain. His arms burned, but he stood his ground. His feet slid across the floor, but didn't. "Give!" Obi-Wan joined him, raising his saber and intercepting part of the blast. Together, the two Jedi stood side by side, and something shifted. The Force, it pulsed between them, old and deep, not rage, not ambition, balance. Sidious's face twisted. Impossible. But his power began to falter. Anakin pushed forward, step by step, blade trembling but steady. His voice cracked with emotion. "I was supposed to be your weapon, but you forgot. I am the chosen one." And with a final cry, he deflected the lightning entirely, back toward the Sith Lord. Sidious screamed. Lightning coursed over his face, his flesh blistering and warping. He staggered, clutching at nothing, howling as the power he had wielded for decades consumed him. For a moment he looked small, weak, mortal. Anakin charged, blade raised, but not to kill. He reached forward with the Force, not to crush, but to strip, to pull the dark side from Sidious like smoke from fire. Sidious collapsed, gasping. Obi-Wan moved forward, but Anakin raised a hand. "No, he's done." The Sith Lord lay there, broken, eyes flickering, mumbling, "You betrayed your purpose." "No," Anakin whispered. "I finally understood it. They didn't kill him, not out of mercy, but because Anakin knew ending him with hate would finish what he had once started. He would not become Vader." Minutes later, Sidious was locked in the back of the ship, unconscious. The base behind them collapsed into itself as they broke into hyperspace. Obi-Wan slumped into a seat, shaking. "Is it over?" Anakin looked at Padme, still alive, still breathing. "No," he said. "It's just beginning." The stars beyond the viewport stretched into blurs of white as the ship tore through hyperspace, leaving the ruined asteroid of Polis Massa behind. Silence filled the cockpit, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm, when everything looks calm, but the damage still lingers deep beneath. Anakin sat beside Padme, watching the soft rise and fall of her chest. Each breath was a small miracle. He had held her hand through the storm. He had brought her back from the edge of death, just as he had pulled himself back from the edge of darkness. Obi-Wan watched from across the room, arms crossed, eyes on the galaxy map as they plotted their next stop. A remote moon, nameless, uninhabited, far beyond the Empire's scanners. But no place in the galaxy was truly safe now, because Palpatine may have been defeated in body, but his empire was rising faster than ever. The holonet crackled to life, intercepted transmissions replayed by the ship's passive receiver. Traitor to the Republic, Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker is presumed dead after launching an unprovoked assault on the Chancellor. Newly crowned Emperor Palpatine calls for complete order in the face of Jedi terrorism. Darth Vader, apprentice to the Emperor, killed in battle during the Jedi uprising on Mustafar. Anakin's face tightened. They'd already rewritten the truth. They didn't just lie, they turned him into a myth. The galaxy believed Darth Vader had lived and died in darkness, that the Emperor had triumphed, that order had been restored, and in a way, Anakin realized, that lie might be the only shield they had left. "If they think I'm dead," he muttered, "they won't be looking for me." Obi-Wan turned slowly. "You want to stay in hiding? I want to give the galaxy time to wake up." Anakin looked back at the holograms. They're too scared to resist now, but they'll remember someday when the pain fades. And what do we do until then? Anakin's gaze dropped to Padmé's sleeping form. He brushed his fingers over her cheek, gentle. We live. We protect the children. We rebuild, quietly. Obi-Wan's voice was soft. You think the Jedi can come back? They never really left, Anakin said. They just forgot who they were. There was another silence. Then Obi-Wan spoke again. And what about you? I'll become what they fear, Anakin said slowly. A shadow, a ghost. Let Vader be their monster. Let me disappear. Obi-Wan didn't argue, because deep down he knew it was the only way. They landed on the moon 2 days later. No cities, no satellites, just rocky fields, caves, and the soft hum of ancient wind. They set up in the ruins of an old temple long abandoned by time and untouched by the war. Here, Padmé recovered slowly, and when the time came, she gave birth, 2 children, tiny, perfect and strong in the Force. A boy, a girl. Anakin held them both in trembling arms, tears spilling freely down his cheeks. They were worth everything, he whispered. Obi-Wan watched quietly from the doorway. He'd never seen Anakin like this. Not the warrior, not the chosen one, just a father. They'll be hunted, Obi-Wan warned softly, if they ever find out who they are. Anakin nodded. Then we keep them hidden, train them if we have to, but let them live, without chains. They named them Luke and Leia, names that had no legend yet, no legacy, only hope. As the Empire tightened its grip on the galaxy, and as the Jedi remained scattered and broken, something else began to stir. Whispered stories, rumors of a Jedi who had died on Mustafar but still walked among the stars, a warrior who had turned back from the brink, a phantom of the Force, neither light nor dark, but balanced. And while the Emperor ruled with fear, hope began to grow. The days on the nameless moon passed slowly, wrapped in the soft rustle of wind and silence. It wasn't home, not in the way Naboo was, or even the Jedi Temple once had been. But it was theirs, a fragile sanctuary tucked in the shadow of a galaxy on fire. Padmé had regained her strength, though her eyes still carried the weight of war. She often sat beneath the stone archway of the ancient temple ruins, holding Leia or Luke in her arms, humming soft Naboo lullabies that echoed through the caverns. Like memories, Anakin watched her from a distance sometimes, unsure if he belonged near her, unsure if he deserved to. The darkness inside him hadn't vanished. It slept now, a quiet voice in the back of his mind, like embers waiting for breath. He had chosen the light. But the light had not erased what he had done. It simply refused to let him be consumed. Obi-Wan had taken to meditation, rebuilding his connection to the Force slowly. He didn't speak much anymore. His presence was like the stone around them, solid, silent, unmoving. Until one day, when a ship appeared in orbit. It was small, old, and carried no military signature. Anakin stood outside the temple with his saber hilt clutched in one hand, watching the ship lower into the clearing with quiet suspicion. Obi-Wan joined him. "Recognize it." "No," Anakin said, "but someone knows we're here." The ramp lowered, and from the shadows emerged a figure in a senator's cloak. Padme gasped behind them. "Mon Mothma!" The woman moved. Quickly, stepping onto the dusty ground with urgency in her voice. "I followed an encrypted broadcast. It took me weeks to trace. I thought it might be a trick, but then I saw the signal. Yours, Padme." Obi-Wan tensed. "You shouldn't have come." "No," Anakin said, his voice sharper. "She had to come. If the signal got out, others might find us too." Mon Mothma stepped forward, lowering her hood. "We've started something. Quietly. There are systems that don't support the Empire. People are afraid to speak out, but they're watching, waiting." Padme stepped closer, Leia in her arms. "You're starting a rebellion." "It already is one," Mon Mothma said. "We just don't have a name for it yet." Anakin looked at her for a long time. "And what do you want from us?" "I wanted to know," she said softly, "if the stories were true. That Darth Vader died because Anakin Skywalker killed him." Obi-Wan's eyes shifted. Padme didn't speak, but Anakin stepped forward. "He's dead." Mon Mothma looked at the two children in Padme's arms and then back to Anakin. "Then let the Empire fear that ghost." That night, after she left, Anakin stood beneath the stars, alone. He thought about the powerful lie that had saved them. Darth Vader had died, but the man who might have become him, the one who had nearly ended it all, still breathed. And yet, people were starting to resist, to whisper, to hope, and the name Skywalker was still unknown. Padme approached, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You were quiet during her visit." "She believes in something," he muttered. "So do I." "She wants the galaxy to rise," Padme said gently, "but it needs a symbol." Anakin's voice dropped to a whisper. "I can't be that symbol. Not after what I've done." Padme touched his chest. "Then let the children be." He looked down at her, searching her eyes. "You want them to be Jedi? I want them to be better." The moon was quiet again, but the winds had changed, and deep in the ruins, Anakin began building again. Not a saber, not a temple, a plan, because if rebellion was coming, he would be ready, not as Darth Vader, but as a ghost with a lightsaber, a shadow behind the flame. The years passed quietly at first. The children grew fast. Luke had his father's fire, stubborn, reckless, and full of questions. Leia had Padme's poise, her silence louder than most people's words. The Force pulsed in both of them, quietly but undeniably, like a second heartbeat. Anakin could feel it every time they touched his hand. Obi-Wan saw it too, but kept his distance, guarding his emotions like one of the ancient statues buried in the temple caves. Padme, ever the quiet fighter, began sending encrypted messages through old rebel channels, whispers about injustice, about resistance, about hope. She never used names, never signed them, but systems across the mid-rim began to stir. Mon Mothma's rebellion grew, and the name Vader became legend, a myth of terror that the Emperor kept alive, never admitting the truth of what happened on Mustafar. And that was the danger, because the lie was working too well. They came. One evening, a small Imperial scout force, 2 ships fast and quiet. No warning, no blasters from orbit, no threat, just shadows. Anakin felt them before they landed. In the Force, they were heavy, like the stink of death. He was playing with Leia, teaching her how to feel the wind on her fingertips when it hit him. A cold shiver, a scream in the Force. He froze. "Go inside," he whispered to Leia. She frowned. "Daddy, now!" She ran. Anakin didn't even reach for his saber. He ran toward the ship bay. Obi-Wan was already there, saber lit. Padme was in the shadows, clutching both children in her arms, and stepping down the ramp of the scout ship were two inquisitors. Dark armor, masked faces, eyes that had long since burned their last tears. One of them, the taller, pulled off her mask. Her voice was cold. "Anakin Skywalker." He didn't respond. "You're supposed to be dead." He tilted his head slightly. "And yet, here we are." She ignited her saber. Obi-Wan stepped forward. "You don't want to do this." "We were promised rewards," the Inquisitor said, "for the one who kills Vader's ghost." Obi-Wan whispered to Anakin, "We have to split them. You take the tall one. I'll draw the other away." Anakin nodded. They moved like lightning. The clash of sabers lit up the forest clearing. Blades whirled, ground scorched, stones shattered. Anakin fought without hate, only purpose. The Inquisitor was good, fast. Her strikes were trained. In the same darkness he'd once embraced, but he knew it better. He anticipated her rage. He remembered it. In 3 swift moves, he disarmed her. She dropped to her knees, panting, eyes wide. "You don't understand," she gasped. "He knows. The Emperor, he knows you're alive." Anakin stepped back, eyes narrowing. "Then this was a test." She nodded. "He's coming." He turned away from her. "Then run. You don't want to be here when he does." And she did. Obi-Wan returned moments later, limping but alive. "The other one's gone. I didn't kill him. They were scouts." Anakin turned to Padme, who clutched the twins with white-knuckled fear. "We can't stay. We won't run forever," she said. "We won't have to," Obi-Wan added, stepping between them. "You trained the children. They're not babies anymore." Anakin's jaw clenched. "You want them to fight?" "No," Obi-Wan said. "I want them to lead." And then he said the words that sealed it all. "We let Vader die to give them life. Now we use that myth to give the galaxy hope." Later that night, as they prepared to leave the moon forever, Anakin walked alone into the old temple one last time. He placed something on the altar. His lightsaber. The one from the Clone Wars. The one he'd built as a Jedi, lost as a Sith. He left it behind, not as a weapon, as a symbol. Outside, the ship rumbled to life. The twins were ready. Padme kissed him softly before stepping aboard. Obi-Wan watched in silence. Anakin looked out over the mountains one last time. The man he could have become was dead, and from his grave a new hope would rise.